Hello and welcome to another episode of the Toronto Dog Whisperer, the channel that helps you help your dog. In today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the technique and the approach to stopping your dog from pulling on the walk. So grab some treats and your dog and get comfortable because this is going to be a fun ride. By the end of today's video, you are going to see the difference that it makes walking your dog without them pulling, and all the different gradual steps that we take to get there. Pulling is the most common issue facing the average dog owner these days. And what I'm going to show you today is the most gradual approach to stop this type of behavior and to create a much more enjoyable walk. Before I get started, I just want to say a big thank you to all the support I've got recently, all the new subscribers, all the likes, all that kind of stuff is fantastic. There's a lot of reasons why dogs pull, but the most common reason is when they get excited. So as soon as they get the leash on and people get them excited, they want to pull. They just cannot wait to get outside. And it's just like a sensory overload. So they have all this like new information, new smells, new sights. Oh, what's going on over there? There's a squirrel, there's another dog, there's a person, there's a truck, there's this, there's that. Like they're all over the place and they're overstimulated. And if they're already excited, they're just going to go to 11. So what we're going to do throughout this process is practice, keeping you and your dog as calm as possible to prevent them from pulling on the leash. This technique that I'm going to show you is a technique that I use myself. So this will work. It will work for anybody, no matter if you're super advanced and you walk dogs professionally, or if you're just the average dog user. This technique will work for pretty much everyone, whether you have a lot of experience walking dogs or if you're the average dog lover who has a dog maybe for the first time and you're having some difficulties walking them without them pulling. It's a very, very common problem and it's something that's easily addressed. And I'm going to show you exactly how to do it in the most gradual and controlled way possible. We're just going to focus on the step-by-step technique. And this is just my approach. This approach works incredibly well because it's so gradual. And because we break down all the different aspects of a walk into individual small components and then put them all together at the end. The dog that I'm going to be using in today's video is very representative of the average dog out there. He is young. He's 10 months old. He hasn't had very much, if any, actual training. And he pulls like a freight train. Where do we begin the process of stopping your dog from actually pulling when they're on the walk? Well, the start of a walk isn't when you get outside. The start of the walk happens as soon as you go to grab the leash, because how you start the walk dictates how the rest of the walk is going to go. So if your dog is super excited, if they're amped up, if they're barking and jumping all over you and pulling and heading towards the door already, you're not off to a great start. So the approach that I'm going to take today is going to take advantage of certain environments. So the first step is actually inside your house, how you set up the walk. Putting on the leash is the beginning of the ritual of taking your dog for a walk. If your dog is nice and calm, like you see Dudley is here, then they're going to be much less likely to pull when you take them outside. So practice this over and over again. If your dog has a negative association with the leash and kind of shies away from it, then that's something separate that you're going to have to work on. In this particular example, what I do is position myself in between Dudley and the door. So I am facing him square on, and I'm going to put the leash on, and I'm going to take it off, and I'm going to put it back on. The whole time, I'm completely silent. Now, it's normal for a dog to get excited when you go to take them for a walk. And it doesn't help that a lot of people use rhetorical questions and their voice to get their dog excited. This is completely unnecessary, and it's going to actually cause the problem that you're trying to resolve. What we're going to do is we're going to take Dudley here and we're going to practice putting the leash on and off over and over and over again. He's a very excitable young dog. Remember, he's about 10 months old, so it doesn't take very much to get him excited. When I pull out the leash, I do not ask him, hey, do you want to go for a walk? With that high-pitched kind of question. It's a rhetorical question, and it gets dogs very excited. Do you want something to eat? Do you want a treat? Do you want $1 million? Like all these things, they don't understand what you're saying. They just know that it's associated with the walk. So these types of rhetorical questions, getting your dog wound up, getting your dog excited, actually creates the behavior that you're trying to prevent. You're going to hear me say a lot over and over again today. Keep your dog calm. Keep yourself calm. The more calm you are, the more calm your dog is. So if you're super excited and you're animated and you're talking to them, you're using their name, you're giving them a lot of affection, all it's going to do is turn up the excitement level to 11. And guess what? They're going to pull because they're excited. When you talk about walking your dog, excitement and pulling are very much correlated. The more excited your dog is, the more they're going to pull. The calmer your dog is, the less likely they are to pull. So that's what we're trying to get rid of. We're trying to get rid of the excess excitement that dogs have that creates the desire, that drive for them to pull. The second thing that we're going to do is practice walking through your door. Now, I know the title of this video is how to stop your dog from pulling, but trust me, these early stages set the foundation. So every step builds on the previous step. So if you start to have problems when you're putting on the leash, guess what? You're going to have problems on the walk. They're going to pull. If you have problems with them rushing out the door, guess what? You're going to have problems with them pulling on the leash. So all these steps are very important to take your time with. Every single door that you walk through, you need to practice. And this is the key, is breaking the walk down into its individual components and just practicing that particular component over and over and over again until they're nice and calm and they're not pulling to get out. So what I'll do is actually put the leash on, walk to the door, open the door and leave it open, but not walk through it right away. And what it does is it stops things from escalating. So every single time your dog goes through a door, what does it do? It creates excitement. Practice going through your front door. Practice going through the elevator, getting on, getting off. Each door is a new challenge, and each door is a portal to the outside world, as far as your dog's concerned. And all that creates excitement. A mild level of excitement is a good thing, and it's completely normal. If your dog gets too excited, that's when they'll start to pull. So we want to keep them as calm as possible. A mild level of excitement is fine, but the more calm they are, the better. Now you're going to see just how calm Dudley is. Now, this example that I'm showing you is after quite a lot of practice, where he would get very excited every time I'd grab the leash and walk towards the door. He knew he was going outside. We're going to put ourselves in between our dogs and the door. And this way, they're not going to make a mad rush for the door, and they're not going to get overly excited about the walk before it actually happens, because we're separating the two out. And you should be able to drop the leash once it's on, and they're going to stay right there. They're not going to move. They're not going to jump. They're not going to make their way to the door. And standing in front of them is going to help you with that. So whether it's walking outside your condo, walking into the elevator, walking out of the elevator, walking out of the front door, whatever it is, however many doors, you need to practice each and every single one of those walking through that door. If your dog pulls, take them back in, do it again. Once we have success going through all these different doors, is we're going to control the environment to make it easier, both for yourself and for your dog. So what do I mean by that? Well, where we're actually going to start walking our dog isn't outside. We're actually going to start inside. So even though we practice going in and out of the house or in and out of your condo or in and out of the elevator and whatever, we're going to go back to actually walking them inside. So if you have a house, basement, hallway, kitchen, doesn't matter. You don't need a whole lot of room. You just need to practice inside. Well, why do you want to practice inside? Well, you want to limit the amount of that external stimuli that gets them so excited that I was telling you about. When you're inside, you don't have to worry about other dogs coming around the corner. You don't have to worry about, this tree or that bush that they want to go sniff. All the scents are familiar to them. So there's less external stimuli to get them excited, and therefore more opportunities for them to participate in the exercise and stay calm. I happen to have a really nice circular hallway in my condo that I like to use. And this is fantastic because you can just walk around in circles. Once you get the inside walk done, where it's nice and relaxed, they're not pulling, you're not having any tension on the leash whatsoever, then you can move on to the next step. If you have a backyard, that's a great next step. I don't have a backyard, so I used my rooftop patio. It's an outdoor space, but it's not full of stimuli. So what we're doing is we're gradually increasing the challenge. We're gradually increasing the level of difficulty, but we're doing it in a way where we're having success at each step. And you might say to yourself, well, I want to stop my dog from pulling when I go outside. Well, this is all part of the process. Anybody who's played sports, anybody who's played a musical instrument understands that you practice different aspects of what you're doing, and then you put it all together at the end. It's all about moving towards that end goal in different stages. If you have difficulty, you can always go back. One of the keys to success in this process, in this approach, is simply going back to the last point you had success. So if you're starting to experience problems after you get through the front door, go back to putting the leash on. Always go back to the last step that you had success with. And it's all about repetition and being patient and staying with it. So the first time you do this type of exercise, you're going to need a lot of time. You shouldn't have anything that I only got 15 minutes, so I'm going to start practicing now. Not a good time. Just set aside as much time as you think you're going to need, and then add more time to that so that you can have the opportunity to stay patient. Patience is going to be really key when it comes to success. So if you're walking your dog in the hallway and you're having success, that's great. That's when you move on to the next step. That's your indication that my dog is starting to understand. And not just to understand that's what you want, but they're also getting to experience what it's like to walk next to you, nice and relaxed. It's going to be a much better overall experience. But remember, they're not used to it yet. The other thing that's important is the image that's in your head. Because people who are used to their dog pulling them, that's the image that they have in their head. So we need to replace that for the person, just like we need to replace it for the dog. You guys are the two sides of the same coin, right? So it's important for you to experience it, and it's important for your dog to experience it. You're establishing a new paradigm. This is the way we're going to do things, and this is way more enjoyable. So once you get to the point where they're walking beside you, loose leash, calmly, inside, then you take the next step. So we're increasing the level of difficulty at each stage, but we're also increasing the confidence that both the person and the dog has. And when you're doing these types of activities, it's also good to have support. If you can do this with the whole household, that's ideal. Okay. The way a dog behaves on a walk is indicative of the person that is walking them. It's not the dog. When your dog starts to pull, all you're going to do is turn around. You're going to go the opposite way. And what that's going to do is put them in the right position. And when we're talking about preventing our dogs from pulling, it's less about where they are in terms of like, oh, I want my dog beside me. And it's more about experiencing the walk together. When they're out in front of you, they're experiencing everything first, and they're not really with you. They know that you're kind of there, but you're not really experiencing together. And the analogy that I'll use is, think about if you went for a walk with a friend or your wife or girlfriend or husband or whomever, and they were 3 feet in front of you while you're walking. Well, that's not an activity that you're participating in together. That's a separate activity because they're so far out in front of you. But when you're walking side by side, you're experiencing the world together. So when your dog starts to pull, you simply turn around, go in the opposite direction, and you're just going to do that over and over again. Now your dog's going to get a little like, hey, what's going on here? We're going in this direction, and now we're going in the opposite direction. Eventually, what they're going to do is they're going to start to understand that you want them to participate in the walk with you. What your dog's going to be thinking is like, oh, okay, so we were going in this direction, and I started pulling, and then we turned around. And now we're going in this direction. Now, if they start pulling, you just turn around. Now, it might seem like a lot of back and forth and you're doing a lot of circles, but this is the easiest, gentlest, most gradual way. And because you don't have too much external stimuli, they're going to focus on the activity that you're doing. Dogs don't necessarily care what you're doing with them. They're more concerned that you're doing something with them. So this is an activity that you're doing with them that is for them. I'm going to briefly touch on the whole idea of equipment because a lot of people put emphasis on the equipment. And in reality, it has less to do with the equipment and more to do with the person. Can you do this type of technique with a harness? Yes, you can. Can you do it with a flat collar? Yes, you can. Both those tools are going to make things more difficult for you. So the exercises are possible, but it's going to take more time. It's going to take a lot more effort, and you're going to have to be more patient. But it's definitely possible. The other tool that I want to briefly touch on is a gentle leader. A gentle leader or a halty is a good tool for beginners to use. It does help with restricting the pulling, but it's not a good long-term tool. So if you find yourself using a halty or a gentle leader for more than a few weeks, you're probably becoming dependent on that tool. And what happens is if you become dependent on it, your dog also becomes dependent on it. And the problem with that is you're physically restricting your dog from pulling by using the most sensitive part of their body, which is their nose. So it's very uncomfortable for a dog to have anything on their nose. Very uncomfortable. It does physically prevent your dog from pulling, but it also creates tension between you and your dog because it shows them that you guys are at opposition. You're not on the same page. Using a halty, using a gentle leader does give you the desired, okay, they're not pulling, but it doesn't take it away. And if you're ever faced with a situation where you don't have it, they're going to pull. Not to mention, it's very, very uncomfortable. Putting anything that restrictive on a dog's face, on their nose, it's not pleasant for that dog. And they're going to experience the walk in a way that's very unpleasant. They're also going to know that, hey, this person who's walking me doesn't trust me. And you know what? I don't trust them. And you're at opposition to each other and your adversaries versus being on the same page, experiencing the same experiences, and just relaxing on the walk. However, it is an effective tool for beginners to use. So by all means, if that's what you need, go for it. However, understand that it's going to be a temporary measure. Okay. It's not going to be forever. My preference is for a slip lead. It's the easiest and it's going to allow you to put in the least amount of effort, and they're designed to be loose. So that's my recommendation. Once you get to the point where you're walking your dog loose leash, and it can be for a few minutes, and then they start pulling again, that's okay. Because this is a process that you're going to have to practice in reality for weeks. I would say that the average dog lover attempting this type of technique for the first time, their dog pulls on a very consistent basis, you're looking probably in the neighborhood of about 4 to 6 weeks of practice before it becomes completely consistent and they're not pulling any longer. It's important to have your expectations set appropriately. Don't be too surprised if on the first day they're pulling the whole time that you're doing it and you start to get frustrated. You start to get impatient. Understand that that's completely normal, that is all part of the process, and that eventually, if you persist and stay calm, they will stop pulling. Okay, so we've mastered walking our dog indoors. Not too hard, hopefully. We've mastered going in and out of doors. And again, the same technique is going to be effective. So if your dog is pulling, whether it's going through a door, just turn around, do it again. If they aren't pulling, practice it a few more times, but then move on to the next stage. After we've worked with our dog indoors where there's not too much stimuli, we've worked with them in our backyard, which is a little bit more stimuli, but still not too much. We're building our confidence. We're building our trust. We're changing the mental image that we have in our heads. We're experiencing a new way of walking with our dog. Our dogs are experiencing a new way with walking with us. Now it's time to find a nice, quiet outdoor space that's in public, but that doesn't have too many distractions. It's not a high traffic area, and we're going to practice there. This is going to get you closer and closer to your end goal. Now, I know what you're saying. Yeah, but there's other people when I walk my dog. There's other dogs when I walk my dog, and we're working up to that. So because this is gradual, it's all about taking your time. Don't rush through it. Take the time to do each and every single one of these steps, and you're going to find success. If you rush through it, you're going to find that it's much more challenging, and you're going to start having more and more difficulties, and then you're going to get frustrated, and so on and so forth. So after we have practiced in that type of environment, again, we're controlling the stimuli, we're controlling the environment to limit the amount of challenge that we have, and both for ourselves and our dogs. Now we're going to start walking in public with other people around and other dogs around. What you want to do is give yourself space, which in this era of social distancing shouldn't be too difficult, but it's important to give your dog space. Giving space doesn't mean you're avoiding other dogs. Giving space means that you're positioning yourself with your dog at a distance that doesn't create too much excitement, doesn't create too much intensity. We're also going to work on facilitating the things that our dogs desire and need when they're on a walk. So what do I mean by that? Well, your dog is naturally going to sniff things, and they're going to sniff things from far away. And they're going to say, oh, something smells really good over there. Their natural inclination is to get excited about what's over there, and they're going to want to pull you over there. It's not rocket science. So what we're going to do is we're going to anticipate the stuff that our dogs want to sniff, and we're going to actually take them to it in a deliberate motion. So I'm going to see something over there or ahead of me, and I'm going to say to myself, you see that tree? I'm going to take you over to that tree. And they're going to have a sniff, and they're going to be like, oh, this is awesome. Thank you for taking me over to this tree. So it removes the desire to pull towards something that they want to engage with. Dogs are going to follow their nose. So whichever way their nose is pointing is where they're going to want to go. And facilitating these types of activities is going to reassure your dog that you don't need to pull, because I'm going to take you there. I'm going to take you to this bush that other dogs have peed on. I'm going to take you to this tree, and you're going to get to sniff it. And once they have an opportunity to sniff it, then you move on. And this is another aspect of the walk that you're going to practice over and over and over again. So if you get them to walk loose leash without them pulling, and then they see a tree and they start pulling, well, that's the next step that you got to practice. So see how we're taking the individual components of the walk and we're piecing it all together so that it makes a complete experience, and one that's realistic and representative of your neighborhood, where you live in, all the different people, dogs, sights, sounds that they interact with. When it comes to other dogs, this is another thing that creates, guess what? Excitement. You got it. So what I want you to do is understand excitement means pulling. The more excited your dog gets, the more they're going to want to pull. So you have to anticipate the things that are going to make them excited, the things that they want, the things that they desire to interact with, and you're going to facilitate those things. Make sure you understand that every time your dog pulls is not a failure. It's an opportunity. So you're going to take note of that situation, and you're going to recreate it, and you're going to practice it. Every time they start pulling towards something, turn around, go in the opposite direction, turn around again, and practice it over and over and over again. So here's a top tip. When it comes to other dogs, it always helps to have other people who are going to help you to practice this activity versus relying on random dogs in public, because they're unknown quantities and you just don't know what's going to happen, and it's going to create anxiety. Picture yourself calling up one of your friends, your neighbor, family members who has a dog, and say, okay, look, I'm going to be practicing introducing my dog to other dogs while we're on a walk so that they don't pull. And you're going to treat it exactly the same way that you did in all the other steps that we did previous. And it's going to be way, way, way better is if you can get somebody who you know and whose dog that you know to play the part of another dog on a walk. And they're going to be out in front of you or to the side or whatever. Practice all these different positions and having your dog stay nice and calm and not pull. Another technique that you can use besides just turning around in the opposite direction is actually walking backwards. When you walk backwards, your dog will naturally focus on where you are. And it's going to be more difficult for them to pull if you're the one who's already in front of them. It's a little awkward at first, but it's definitely a technique that works. Once you find that they're relaxing, so they're walking at the same pace while you're walking backwards, you can just turn around and move forward. If they start to pull again, turn around the opposite direction Walk backwards again and repeat that process. This is very gradual. So what you'll find is a dog that pulls consistently every single day, every single minute, every single second of walks. What's going to happen is that it's going to trail off. So it's not like an on-off switch. The behavior will go away over time. As you build trust, as you build confidence, and as the relationship between you and your dog changes into a much more positive one. Don't get discouraged if you're having difficulty. You need to think of it like an investment of time. Every minute that you invest into helping your dog to achieve this calm, relaxed state when they're walking is going to pay off. So think about it this way. Let's say it takes you 2 months, right? That's a huge amount of time to practice walking your dog like this, right? But they're going to be alive for years. So you're going to reap the benefits of that 2-month investment for years and years and years after. And when it comes to quality of life with you and your dog, this is going to make a massive difference. So it's worth the investment. It's worth the time, and it's definitely worth the effort. Okay, so I'm also going to comment on treats. So using treats, using food or toys to distract your dog as a method of stopping them from pulling. This is a technique that can be effective, but as you're going to see in this clip here, what it does is actually it creates excitement. And what do we say about excitement? The more excitement you have, the more your dog's going to want to pull. So if you're going to use treats, even better, just use the treat to entice their nose. So don't actually give it to them, but just put it in front of their nose. They catch the nose, and then you can turn around. Using a toy can have the same effect in terms of if your dog is food motivated or if your dog is play motivated, it's going to distract them for a little bit and maybe stop them from pulling. But again, it's going to create excitement. And eventually, your dog's going to catch wind to what you're doing because you're kind of like bribing them. It's kind of like trying to take a shortcut. And like we talked about with the halty, people become dependent on the food or the toy to prevent their dog from pulling. That's why I don't particularly use it. It's okay if you do. I know there's lots of people out there on YouTube who say, oh, just give your dog a treat, give your dog a piece of food, whatever, use a toy. I don't particularly like it because it doesn't produce long-term results. And if you don't have food on you and you don't have a toy, then what are you left with? So this gradual approach will get you the results that you need, but there's really no kind of shortcuts. It's like you do the work, you put in the time, you put in the practice, you're going to get the results, and the results will be there long term. This isn't a gimmick. It's not a, buy this piece of equipment and it's going to stop your dog from pulling. Be very wary of those claims because there is no piece of equipment that guarantees that the desire to pull will go away. This particular technique is just one technique. It isn't, rocket science. It isn't the be all and end all. If this technique isn't to your liking and it doesn't mesh with your personality, that's fine. Try another technique. Whatever works is fine. This is the most effective, the most gradual for beginners to use. And I use this technique myself. So whether you're very well versed and you're a dog walker and you do this every single day, or you're just the average person who got their first dog, this technique will work for you. So in summary, give this a shot. Be very, very patient with yourself as well as with your dog. Get the whole household to participate. So not just mom or dad, get everybody who lives with that dog to participate and practice. Support each other, help each other out, And definitely, if you're having trouble, leave a comment below. I'll do my very best to give you some tips, but this is the best approach that I've found. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, share it with your friends. If you see one of your neighbors whose dog pulls them along, definitely send them this video and give this a shot. And like I said, if you love your dog, take them for a walk.